A bad trade can ruin an MLB team's future. And while most trades have a clear winner and a clear loser, there are some rare cases where both teams came out on top. Like back in 2016, when the Cubs and Yankees made a deal so monumental that it helped break a playoff curse which stood for 108 years. The Cubs are now a well-respected recent World Series victor, but for the previous century, that couldn't have been farther from the truth. The Cubs won the World Series in 1907 and 1908, but then lost their following 6 appearances. Then, in 1945, they made it back to the World Series, hoping to finally reclaim their throne. But unfortunately for them, while the game was happening, a nearby restaurant owner who brought his pet goat to the stadium was thrown out of Wrigley Field and proceeded to curse the team. The owner was so enraged that he declared, "Them Cubs, they ain't gonna win no more." And they didn't. They lost the 1945 World Series and did not make it to the postseason again all the way until 1984. They couldn't even make it to the 1998 NLCS while Sammy Sosa was crushing more home runs than other teams' entire lineups. And to make it all worse, Steve Bartman interfered on a pop-up during the 2003 NLCS, which potentially cost the team their entire season. The Cubs were better at choking in big moments than Matt Ryan in the Super Bowl. But then came 2016. The team was filled with lovable and underrated talents like Anthony Rizzo and Ben Zobrist. And after rounding out their rotation by trading with the Yankees for Aroldis Chapman, the Cubs were finally able to break the Billy Goat curse. The trade worked great for both teams though. The Cubs got a flamethrowing closer rental and their World Series ring, and the Yankees got 4 solid prospects, one of which included electric rookie Gleyber Torres. Torres started his Yankee career with a bang by coming 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. And 7 respectable seasons and 138 Yankee home runs later, the trade has been ranked as one of the 25 smartest moves of the past 25 years for the Yankees. Something that could also be said about Luis Arias and Pablo Lopez's 2023 blockbuster deal. On January 20th, 2023, the Twins traded Luis Arias to the Marlins for Pablo Lopez, Jose Salas, and Brian Churio, a swap that even when it happened made a ton of sense. The Twins had plenty of infielders and needed to bolster their rotation, and the Marlins had a heap of pitchers but nobody able to hit a baseball even if it were a watermelon. The deal wrapped in the offseason, and immediately to start 2023, both players went off. Arias held a batting average above 400 for multiple weeks and eventually went on to win the batting title with a 354 average. Lopez didn't disappoint either. He secured his first ever All-Star award after throwing 234 strikeouts with 11 wins and a 3.66 ERA. And while Arias has since jumped ship to the Padres, the deal is still remembered as a rare win-win deal. However, this win-win trade is completely low stakes compared to that of the 1990 Roberto Alomar trade because it literally reshaped the entire baseball landscape. During the 1990 winter meetings, Blue Jays general manager Pat Gillick woke up one morning and decided, screw it, today I'm going to take the red pill. In a shocking move, Pat crafted a blockbuster deal which sent 2 of Toronto's best players, Fred Crime Dog McGriff and Tony Professor Gadget Fernandez, to the San Diego Padres in exchange for outfielder Joe Carter and a promising young second baseman Roberto Alomar. People called it a blockbuster, but it was more like a controlled demolition. What followed was a 2-year residency for Toronto atop the baseball world. Alomar came in and snatched up gold gloves like they were Pokemon cards. Meanwhile, Joe Carter casually drove in 100 runs a year like it was a part of his morning routine. And in '93, he ended the World Series with a walk-off home run so iconic, it made Canadians happier than a free donut day at Tim Hortons. On the flip side, McGriff went on to hit nearly 500 career bombs, and Fernandez had hands smoother than jazz at shortstop. While the Padres never got a ring out of the deal, they still got solid production out of future Hall of Famer Fred McGriff and sucked 12.7 WAR out of McGriff and Fernandez over their 2 seasons with the team. But if this trade was a rocket ship that launched a team to a World Series, then Lorenzo Cain and Alcides Escobar heading to the Royals in 2010 was a full-on SpaceX missile.
Jerry, Greinke reportedly keen on getting out of Kansas City because of all that losing, and now it looks like he's going to the Brewers. What do you make of this deal?
By the end of 2010, Zack Greinke had seen enough losing to last 3 lifetimes and was basically begging the Royals to trade him. So Kansas City agreed and sent their Cy Young winning, record-breaking, strikeout-slinging golden boy to Milwaukee in exchange for 4 prospects. The prospects' names sounded more like law firm partners than a championship core: Escobar, Kane, Jeffries, and Odorizzi. But that didn't seem to matter. At the time of the trade, it was thought the Brewers were clear winners. After all, Greinke was nasty. Like have a 2.16 ERA and 10.4 WAR in 2009 nasty. But flash forward 6 years, and Kansas City was waist deep in champagne, Escobar was hitting inside the park homers in the World Series, and Lorenzo Cain was robbing more home runs than a pickpocket in Times Square. Jeffries and Odorizzi didn't stick around long, but that hardly mattered because Cain and Escobar essentially rebuilt the Royals' vertebrae like a spinal surgeon. In 2014 and 2015, the team went from a league-wide punchline to October killers and made back-to-back World Series appearances, including winning it all in 2015. On the other hand, while Greinke wasn't winning any rings or joining any parades, he was still collecting Cy Young votes and Gold Glove awards like Infinity Stones, and he stands as a strong candidate for the Hall of Fame one day. This trade worked out great for both sides. So when Alcides Escobar yelled, "Thank you, Zack Greinke," at the Royals World Series parade, it wasn't sarcasm. It was a genuine shout out to the guy whose exit kickstarted an entire dynasty. Sometimes losing a king is precisely what it takes to build a kingdom, a lesson that the Mariners and Randy Johnson know all too well. Randy Johnson wasn't just a trade deadline acquisition. He was an act of God in a mullet. The Astros picked him up from the Mariners in July of '98, and for 2 glorious months, he pitched like a man trying to erase the very concept of offense from baseball. Houston went 10-1 in his starts. He posted a 1.28 ERA, and he struck out 116 batters in just 84 innings. With 4.3 WAR from Johnson in only about 2 months, he pitched as if every outing came with a personal grudge. Unfortunately, though, the postseason didn't return him any favors. The Astros offense completely ghosted him, and the team bowed out early, which caused Johnson to peace out in free agency and head to Arizona. So did Houston win the trade? Not really, but they didn't lose either. The Mariners parlayed their sale of Randy Johnson into 6 years of Freddie Garcia, which included 2 All-Star nods, solid work from John Halama, and some productive seasons out of Carlos Guillen, who later bloomed in Detroit. In terms of total WAR, the Astros got 4.3 compared to the Mariners' 33.1, but it was never about the long game for the Stros. It was about giving their best team ever a true ace and a chance at a championship. Even if it didn't end in a trophy, watching Randy Johnson scorch the earth every 5th day was worth every prospect the Stros mailed to the Pacific Northwest. And the same could be said for the Brewers, who traded half their farm system to the Indians in 2008 to receive reigning Cy Young winner CC Sabathia, and boy did it pay off. In July of 2008, the Milwaukee Brewers made a trade so bold, it felt like something out of a movie. A last chance heist to steal October glory. With the 26-year playoff drought hanging over the franchise like a storm cloud, general manager Doug Melvin pushed all his chips to the center of the table and anteed up for the league's ultimate prize. Doug shipped off top prospect Matt Laporta, Rob Bryson, Zach Jackson, and a player to be named later for reigning AL Cy Young winner CC Sabathia. It was a deal fueled by desperation, courage, and a little bit of madness. And in return, Sabathia delivered one of the most electric stretches of pitching the game has ever seen. 17 games, 130.2 innings, an ERA of 1.65, and a whip of 1.003. Sabathia was a walking adrenaline spike. At one point, he tanked 3 straight starts on short rest, and then with the season hanging on the balance, threw a complete game on the final day of the season to clinch the wild card. He was Milwaukee's workhorse, ace, and heart all in one, squeezing a season's worth of brilliance into only 3 unforgettable months. And because of this, the trade likely would have turned out horribly for the Indians if not for a surprise superstar hidden inside the deal. Matt Laporta and company totally flopped, but Michael Brantley, who was the player to be named later, made the whole thing worth it for the Indians. He developed into a cornerstone all-star for the franchise and blossomed into one of the most consistent hitters in the American League. By July of 2014, Brantley ranked 3rd in the American League in batting average with 328, 8th in RBIs with 60, and 3rd in WAR with 3.9, proving that the true gem of the trade wasn't the hype prospect or the minor league arms, but the quietly elite outfielder essentially thrown into the deal at the last second through a gentleman's agreement. However, if this trade was chaotic, then what the Rays Rays and Brewers did in 2021 was completely lawless. In May of 2021, the Brewers were stuck in a mediocre 21-23 start and badly needed a fix at shortstop. Luis Arias was struggling, Orlando Garcia was gone, and the infield defense was a mess. So they pulled off an extremely rare early season trade. They sent relievers Drew Rasmussen and JP Fireeisen to the Rays for Willy Adames and Trevor Richards. What initially seemed bizarre though had an immediate turnaround. Milwaukee went 73-45 the rest of the way, with Adames hitting 285 with 20 home runs and becoming a central piece of their lineup. And on the Rays end, Tampa did what they did best: take undervalued arms and mine their natural resources until they find gold. Rasmussen had been working out of the bullpen in Milwaukee, but the Rays saw more. They stretched him into a starter and it paid huge dividends. Where in 2021, he held a 2.44 ERA, and in 2022, a 2.84 ERA. In the end, the Brewers got the shortstop they desperately needed, and the Rays turned a bullpen bust into a formidable starter. When all is said and done, this trade will definitely be revisited as a clear win-win deal for both teams. And the same can definitely be said for Dan Harron's move to Los Angeles in 2010.
The Arizona Diamondbacks have traded their starting pitcher, Dan Harron.
Dan Harron might be the best starting pitcher to ever be traded 5 times. He was consistently excellent, but he never stayed long in one place. One of the most impactful moves of his career came in 2010, when the retooling Diamondbacks dealt him to the Angels. At the time, Harron had just finished back-to-back All-Star seasons, led the NL in strikeout to walk ratio, and even finished top 5 in Cy Young voting, which was enough to convince the Angels to make their move on him. Harron was electric down the stretch with the Angels, posting a 2.84 ERA over 94 innings and a 1.70 ERA in his final 8 starts of 2010. He followed that up with an even better 2011 season where he led the AL in games started, complete games, and strikeout to walk ratio. The Diamondbacks, meanwhile, got a strong return of players focused on pitching depth, including Joe Saunders, Patrick Corbin, Rafael Rodriguez, and Tyler Skaggs. Joe Saunders gave them over 400 innings with a sub 4.00 ERA across 3 seasons. Patrick Corbin, then rated the number 22 Angels prospect, wouldn't debut until 2012, but later blossomed into one of Arizona's best homegrown arms. He made 2 All-Star teams, finished top 5 in Cy Young voting in 2018, and ranks top 5 in franchise history in wins, innings, and strikeouts. In terms of WAR, this trade was about as close to dead even as it gets. Harron's 13.2 WAR with the Angels just barely edges the combined 13.1 WAR of Corbin and Saunders for the Diamondbacks, but both teams clearly walked away with serious value. This isn't the only great trade the Diamondbacks have made though, because in 2019, they made a deal with the Marlins that essentially blasted off the careers of 2 of the league's biggest stars today.
Zach Gallen an early lead. He is your Diamondback starting pitcher tonight.
It's extremely rare that a 1-for-1 trade works out. Even rarer is both players becoming franchise cornerstone. But nonetheless, in July of 2019, with the Marlins deep in the sludge of a 105-loss season and the Diamondbacks dancing around 500, both teams decided to roll the dice on a 1-for-1 deal. Arizona sent the number 59 overall prospect, Jazz Chisholm Jr., to Miami for the number 5 overall prospect, Zach Gallen. At the time, Marlins fans were skeptical, and understandably so. Gallen had been a revelation, a 2.72 ERA in 7 starts, fresh off destroying AAA. And Chisholm, though oozing with upside and swagger, was hitting only .220 with a strikeout rate that would make Tony Gwynn roll over in his grave. Flash forward, Gallen is now one of the most consistent aces in baseball, a Cy Young finalist, All-Star, and the steady engine behind Arizona's return to October. Chisholm, he's been electric when healthy. A 30-30 threat who moved from second base to center field without even blinking, became the face of MLB The Show, and still hasn't even touched his ceiling. 5 years in, the Diamondbacks have clearly reaped the more immediate reward. Gallen has outwarred Jazz by a wide margin, and Jazz has also left the Marlins for the Yankees, but he is still just 27 and might yet have another gear to hit, especially with his new torpedo bat. That's what made this trade so fun. It wasn't a fleece, it was a gamble. 2 teams with different needs trading from surplus to address weakness. And for once, both teams probably walked away feeling like they won, just like the Phillies and Astros must have felt during their 2007 blockbuster deal.
Brad Lidge stretches. The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out.
In November of 2007, Phillies GM Pat Gillick dialed up a familiar number, former Phillies exec Ed Wade, and the two orchestrated a swap that would echo in championship parades and highlight reels forever. The Phillies sent a three-piece package: speedy center fielder Michael Bourne, veteran reliever Geoff Geary, and minor league slugger Mike Costanza to the Astros in exchange for closer Brad Lidge and utility man Eric Bruntlett. On paper, it was a gamble. Lidge had just ridden a roller coaster of blown saves and injuries in Houston, and some still whispered about the monster shot Albert Pujols launched off him back in 2005. But Gillick bet on redemption, and what he got was perfection. Lidge went a staggering 48 for 48 in save opportunities in 2008, shutting the door in every single game he was asked, including the World Series finale. Bruntlett even turned in a little magic of his own, being one of the only players ever to finish off a game with an unassisted triple play. Meanwhile, Bourne blossomed into a Gold Glove catalyst atop Houston's lineup, stealing 50-plus bags in 3 straight years and delivering multiple 5-WAR seasons. Geary gave Houston a couple solid years in middle relief, and even if Costanza barely cracked the majors, it was a true win-win deal. Houston got a spark plug and some value, and Philly got their ring. It's great for everyone when a win-win trade occurs, but unfortunately for baseball, this video only tells half the story regarding blockbuster deals. In baseball history, there have been just as many, if not way more horrible trades than good ones. Watch our video on the 10 worst trades in MLB history to see why teams like the Red Sox and Marlins are still reeling after getting rid of Mookie Betts and Miguel Cabrera.